how to detach from people and situations. There comes a point in your life where holding on feels heavier than letting go, where your heart is tired of trying to fix what keeps breaking you, and your spirit whispers that something needs to change. Detachment isn't about becoming cold or uncaring. It's about finally choosing your peace over the chaos people bring into your life. It's about recognizing when someone's presence is costing you more than their absence ever will. And the moment you understand that, everything shifts. You stop chasing people who make you feel unseen. You stop forcing connections that drain you. You stop apologizing for protecting your energy. In this video, you're going to learn how to detach with strength, with grace, and with emotional maturity. Because some people are meant to be lessons, not lifetimes, and some situations are designed to redirect you, not define you. If you are ready to take back your power, reclaim your peace, and finally release what has been weighing on your heart, then stay with me, because your season of detachment starts now. Detachment begins the moment you stop chasing what drains you. Detachment is not something that happens overnight. It begins the moment you finally realize how much of yourself you've been giving away to people who were never offering anything real in return. It starts with a quiet awareness, an uncomfortable but necessary awakening, that you've been running after connections that exhaust you, situations that overwhelm you, and people who only show up when your light benefits them. For so long, you've been pouring, fixing, explaining, proving, and hoping, and yet nothing seems to change. The same patterns repeat, the same disappointments come back wearing different faces. And deep inside, you know it's because you've been holding on to the potential of people instead of the reality of who they keep showing you they are. Detachment begins the moment you stop trying to convince someone to choose you, understand you, or value you. Because when you stop chasing what drains you, you finally create space for what is aligned with your peace, your worth, and your emotional well-being. You learn that not everyone deserves your effort. Not everyone is meant to stay, and not everyone can meet you where you're growing. Some people only want the version of you that bends, sacrifices, and shrinks to keep them comfortable. But detachment teaches you that you don't need to chase them to prove your loyalty. You don't need to exhaust yourself trying to hold a connection together by yourself. When someone wants you in their life, their actions will reveal it effortlessly. They won't cause confusion. They won't drain your energy. They won't leave you wondering whether you matter. Detachment is recognizing that you cannot carry a relationship built on your effort alone. You cannot force reciprocity. You cannot teach someone how to treat you if they never cared to learn in the first place. The journey of detaching often begins with heartbreak, but not always from love. Sometimes it's heartbreak from disappointment, heartbreak from realizing you've tolerated far too much, heartbreak from seeing your own patterns clearly for the first time. You start to question why you felt the need to chase people who were running away, why you allowed your kindness to become your weakness, why you kept giving chances to people who couldn't even respect the first one. But within these questions is the birth of your strength. Because detachment is not the absence of feeling, it's the presence of self-awareness. It's understanding that your emotional energy is precious, and giving it to the wrong people is a silent form of self-destruction. You begin to see that chasing is rooted in fear, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of ending up alone. But detachment teaches you that nothing healthy grows from fear. Real connections don't require begging. Real love doesn't require self-betrayal. Real alignment doesn't demand that you abandon your self-respect. When you detach, you stop negotiating with disrespect, inconsistency, and selfish behavior. You stop tolerating situations that make you feel small. You stop explaining your worth to people who never took the time to understand it. You stop justifying your place in someone's life as if you should be grateful for the bare minimum. You start to remember who you are, and the more you remember your value, the less interested you become in chasing anyone who cannot see it. Detaching from people also allows you to detach from the illusions they created in your mind. You stop clinging to the fantasy of who they could be. You stop waiting for the one day that never comes. You stop believing that if you just love them more, they'll magically become the person you need. Detachment shows you that loving someone is not the same as losing yourself for them. Caring deeply is not the same as sacrificing your emotional health. When you detach, you take the pressure off your heart. You free yourself from trying to fix what was never your responsibility. And most importantly, you learn how to prioritize your peace instead of someone's potential. In detachment, you start building emotional independence. You realize that your happiness cannot depend on someone else's presence, attention, or validation. You learn how to sit with yourself, understand yourself, and give yourself what you once begged others to provide. Your worth no longer rises and falls based on someone's inconsistency. Your identity no longer shatters when someone pulls away. Detachment gives you back the power you unknowingly gave away, the power of knowing that you will be okay with, or without anyone. As you detach, you also start to feel lighter. Your mind becomes clearer. Your heart becomes calmer. The things that once triggered you begin to lose their hold. You no longer rush to respond, to fix, to save, to chase. You learn to observe without absorbing. You learn to let people show you who they truly are without trying to rewrite their reality. You learn to walk away without feeling guilty. Detachment strengthens your intuition. It teaches you to trust your inner voice more than someone else's promises. And once you taste that level of peace, you will never again entertain anything that threatens it. Ultimately, detachment is an act of self-love. It is the moment you choose yourself, your dignity, and your emotional well-being over any connection that demands you sacrifice them. It is the moment you stop chasing what drains you and start attracting what aligns with your growth. Detachment does not mean you become heartless. It means you finally become whole. And from that wholeness, you create a life where your energy is protected, your boundaries are respected, and your peace becomes non-negotiable. Your peace must become more important than their presence. There comes a powerful turning point in your life when you realize that peace is not just something you want. It's something you need. It's the foundation of your emotional balance, your mental clarity, your spiritual grounding, and your ability to function in this world with strength and intention. But the truth is, as long as you keep prioritizing someone's presence over your own peace, you will always feel conflicted, drained, and divided within yourself. This is where detachment becomes essential. Because the moment you choose your inner peace over the chaos someone brings into your life, that is the moment you reclaim your self-worth, your voice, and your emotional freedom. For so long, you may have allowed certain people to stay in your life, simply because you love them, because you didn't want to hurt them, or because their absence felt too heavy to imagine. You tolerated behaviors that made you uncomfortable. You accepted explanations that never matched their actions. You forgave patterns that repeatedly wounded you. You convinced yourself that holding on was strength, when in reality, it was fear. The fear of being alone, the fear of change, the fear of what life would look like without them. But peace does not grow in the soil of fear. Peace grows in the soil of self-respect. It grows when you finally set boundaries that protect your soul, instead of boundaries that protect someone else's comfort. Choosing peace means understanding the cost of someone's presence. Some people are expensive, not financially, but emotionally. They drain your energy. They disrupt your clarity. They disturb your balance. They create tension in your spirit, even when they don't say a single word. You feel their chaos before they walk into the room. You feel their instability when you answer their calls. You feel their inconsistency in your chest long after they've left. And every time you allow that energy into your life, you sacrifice a piece of yourself. People don't have to be bad to be incompatible with your peace. Sometimes they are simply not aligned with who you are becoming. Sometimes their presence keeps you stuck in cycles you've outgrown. Sometimes they trigger the older version of you, the version you worked so hard to move beyond. When you choose peace over presence, you understand that letting someone go isn't rejection, it's self-preservation. You're not pushing them away out of anger. You're protecting your inner world from destruction. You're choosing stability over emotional turbulence. You're choosing growth over stagnation. And most of all, you're choosing yourself. This is not selfish, it's self-respect. Emotional maturity is knowing that you can care about someone and still recognize that their presence is unhealthy for your well-being. being. It's knowing that love does not require you to lose yourself, break yourself, or betray yourself. Real love, whether romantic or platonic, should add to your peace, not destroy it. Some people stay in your life because they know you're afraid to walk away. They know you will forgive, overlook, compromise, and bend because you fear losing them. But the truth is, the only thing you lose when you choose your peace is stress, anxiety, heartbreak, and confusion. When you distance yourself from chaos, your life naturally becomes lighter. You breathe easier, you think more clearly, you sleep better. You stop overanalyzing every conversation. You stop waiting for the next argument, the next disappointment, the next emotional shock. Your peace is the proof that walking away was necessary. Choosing peace also means listening to your intuition, not your attachment. Your intuition always knows when someone is hurting your spirit. It sends you quiet warnings, feelings of discomfort, heaviness, or unease. But attachment convinces you to stay. It feeds you excuses like, maybe they'll change, maybe it will get better, or maybe I'm overreacting. However, the body never lies. Your energy never lies. Your peace never lies. Peace isn't just the absence of conflict. It's the presence of emotional safety. It's the calm that settles in your heart when you're surrounded by the right people. It's the alignment you feel when you're living according to your values instead of someone else's chaos. You learn that protecting your peace requires difficult decisions. You may need to detach from people you once imagined forever with. You may need to create space from family members whose words always cut deep. You may need to pull back from friendships that stopped feeling mutual. You may need to distance yourself from environments that drain your soul. And yes, detachment may feel lonely at first, but loneliness is temporary. Chaos is permanent. The peace you gain from letting go will always outweigh the discomfort of the transition. When you choose peace, you stop trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed. You stop absorbing emotions that don't belong to you. You stop reacting to every negative word or action. You stop participating in drama. You stop explaining your worth. You learn that silence is powerful. Distance is healing. Boundaries are necessary. And anyone who truly values you will never make you choose between them and your peace in the first place. Peace changes your life because peace changes you. It shifts your habits, your standards, your energy, your relationships, and your future. With peace, you show up differently. You speak with more clarity. You love with more depth. You choose with more intention. You attract better connections, healthier people, and opportunities that align with your highest self. Peace is magnetic. It pulls you away from what is wrong for you and leads you toward what is right. And once you experience this level of inner calm, you will never again tolerate the chaos you used to settle for. So let this be your reminder. Your peace is worth protecting. It is worth prioritizing. It is worth fighting for. Do not allow anyone's presence to be more important than your emotional stability. Do not shrink yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Do not sacrifice your inner world for a relationship built on inconsistency. You deserve peace that feels like home, not chaos that feels like survival. And when you finally choose that peace, everything in your life will shift. Your spirit, your boundaries, your relationships, your energy, and your future. Because the moment your peace becomes non-negotiable, your entire life becomes unshakable. Distance is not punishment. It's protection. There comes a moment in everyone's life when they finally understand that distance is not an act of cruelty. It's an act of clarity. When you step back from someone, it doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you're trying to hurt them. And it doesn't mean you're punishing them. Distance simply means you've reached a point where your emotional well-being matters more than pretending everything is okay. It's the quiet decision to protect yourself from the repeated disappointments, the draining patterns, the unpredictable moods, or the instability that someone's presence brings into your life. Distance is the boundary you create when words no longer work, when explanations are no longer heard, and when your heart has been stretched too thin, trying to accommodate what has never been reciprocated. Most people misunderstand distance. They think it's cold, harsh, or heartless. But distance is one of the most powerful forms of self-respect. It's the moment you stop overextending, overgiving, and over-explaining yourself to people who don't really value the effort. It's the space you take so you don't lose yourself in the process of trying to hold someone else together. When the energy becomes too heavy, when the connection becomes one-sided, when the emotional labor becomes too much, distance becomes your sanctuary. It's where you go to breathe, to understand your feelings, to regain your center, and to remind yourself of who you are outside of the chaos someone brought into your life. Distance is also clarity. When you step back, you finally begin to see things for what they are, not what you wish they were. You see the patterns you were excusing. You see the red flags you kept overlooking. You see the truth of someone's character without your emotional attachment blurring your vision. Sometimes, you need distance not because you don't care, but because you care too much, and caring that deeply without boundaries becomes self-destructive. Distance allows you to detach from the emotional noise and reconnect with your intuition. And your intuition has been whispering the truth for a long time. It's just that your attachment kept drowning it out. Often, people will react to your distance. They might accuse you of being cold or distant. They may try to guilt you, question you, or make you feel wrong for protecting yourself. But their reaction reveals everything. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always see your boundaries as a threat. People who are used to your constant availability will always be upset when you finally choose yourself. And people who never valued your presence will suddenly notice your absence. Not because they love you, but because they lost the convenience of you. This is why distance is not punishment, it's protection. It shields you from emotional manipulation, from guilt-driven dynamics, and from cycles that repeat themselves endlessly. Distance also helps you understand the difference between someone who truly cares and someone who only cares when you pull away. A person who values you will respond to your distance with respect. They will acknowledge your feelings, adjust their behavior, or at the very least, honor the space you need. But a person who only values what you do for them will react with annoyance, defensiveness, or blame. They won't ask if you're okay. They won't reflect on their behavior. They won't consider how their actions contributed to the distance. Instead, they'll make your boundary about them. That reaction alone shows you why distance was necessary in the first place. One of the biggest lessons distance teaches is that connection cannot be forced. No matter how hard you try, you cannot make someone show up differently. You cannot make them communicate better, love better, respect better, or understand better. You can explain your feelings repeatedly, but if someone is not willing to listen or change, repetition becomes self-betrayal. At some point, silence becomes your answer and distance becomes your healing, because you realize that you cannot save people from themselves. You cannot pour into someone who is comfortable watching you empty yourself. You cannot be the only one fighting for a bond that requires effort from both sides. Distance also gives you space to reconnect with yourself. When you are constantly entangled in someone's behavior or unpredictability, you lose sight of your own emotional landscape. You stop hearing your own needs. You silence your own voice. You forget what it feels like to be grounded, stable, and at peace. But when you step back, you start recognizing your own emotional signals again. You begin to reconnect with your own desires, boundaries, and values. You rediscover the version of yourself that doesn't rely on someone else's presence for validation or direction. Distance helps you strengthen your self-worth, rebuild your emotional independence, and create a healthier relationship with yourself. Distance is also a form of healing. It helps you process your emotions without external influence. It gives you time to grieve what you hoped the relationship would be instead of clinging to what it is. It allows you to release the pressure, expectations, and emotional baggage you've been carrying. Healing doesn't happen when you stay in the same environment that broke you. Healing begins when you create space. And sometimes that space needs to be wide enough to separate you from the pain, long enough to finally reflect on it with clarity. Ultimately, distance is a sign of growth. It means you're no longer operating from fear. Fear of letting go, fear of being alone, fear of confrontation, fear of change. You start operating from self-respect, self-awareness, and emotional maturity. You realize that preserving your peace is more important than holding on to people who don't value it. You understand that stepping back is not giving up. It's leveling up. It's choosing yourself without apology. It's reclaiming your emotional power and refusing to let anyone disrupt your inner world again. So remember, this distance is not the end. It's the beginning of your healing. It's the space where your heart recalibrates, your mind clears, and your spirit strengthens. It is not punishment, it is protection. And protecting your peace is the highest form of self-love you will ever practice. Letting go becomes easier when you finally accept what they keep showing you. There is a very specific moment in your journey when letting go stops feeling impossible and finally begins to feel inevitable. It's the moment you stop arguing with someone's patterns, stop romanticizing their potential, and stop rewriting the story in your head to protect your heart from the truth. Letting go becomes easier when you finally accept what someone has been showing you all along. Not just through their words, but through their consistency, their choices, their behavior, their silence, and their lack of effort. The truth is, people reveal themselves long before we're ready to see them. We just hold on to who we wish they were, because accepting who they truly are feels like heartbreak. But the moment you choose truth over fantasy, everything changes. The weight on your chest becomes lighter, the confusion fades, the emotional chaos settles, and you finally see that holding on was hurting you more than letting go ever will. Acceptance is painful, but it is also liberating. For so long, you may have been trying to fix someone who didn't even see themselves as broken. You may have been trying to help someone who didn't want to be helped. You may have been waiting for someone to finally show up in the way you showed up for them. And they never did, not because you weren't enough, but because they never planned to. When you accept someone's patterns, you stop giving them credit for intentions they never acted on. You stop imagining a version of them that exists only in your hopes. You stop building your emotional world on, maybe someday. Acceptance forces you to see that consistency isn't complicated. If someone cares, you'll know. If they don't, you'll also know. When their words keep promising what their actions never deliver, that gap is your sign, not your challenge. Letting go also becomes easier when you acknowledge how much you've been carrying. You start to recognize the emotional labor you've been doing. How often you were the one forgiving, reaching out, explaining, apologizing, giving, and compromising. How often you were the one initiating conversations, fixing arguments, and repairing connections that they carelessly damaged. How often you were the only one trying, hoping, believing, and holding on. When you see how one-sided it's been, the fantasy dissolves. Because love should not feel like a burden you carry alone. Connection is supposed to be mutual, not a place where you fight for two. Acceptance teaches you that patterns tell you everything you need to know. People may change, but patterns rarely lie. If someone constantly disappears when you need them most, that's who they are. If they invalidate your feelings every time you try to communicate, that's who they are. If they take advantage of your kindness, that's who they are. If they only come close when they need something but vanish when you need support, that's who they are. It is not your job to rewrite their behavior into something more comforting. It is not your responsibility to justify their lack of effort. It is not your purpose to fix what someone refuses to acknowledge. You can love someone deeply and still accept that they're not good for your spirit. The hardest part is admitting that you stayed longer than you should have. Not because you were weak, but because you were loyal. Because you believed in them. Because you saw their potential, not their reality. Because you wanted to be the reason they healed, the reason they changed, the reason they finally opened up. But healing is a personal responsibility. Growth is a choice. Change requires willingness. And none of those things can be forced upon someone who is comfortable staying the same. Letting go becomes easier the moment you accept that you can't save someone who refuses to save themselves. You can love them, pray for them, wish the best for them, but you cannot lose yourself trying to carry them. Letting go also becomes easier when you remember who you are. When you reconnect with your self-worth, you start to realize that you deserve a love that is steady, not chaotic. You deserve a connection that brings peace, not anxiety. You deserve effort, not excuses. You deserve presence, not inconsistency. You deserve someone who chooses you, not someone you have to convince. When you truly internalize your worth, you stop tolerating the crumbs that once felt like a feast. You stop settling for temporary attention. You stop accepting love that requires you to shrink. The self-worth you gain through acceptance becomes the strength you use to finally release the things that have been breaking you. Acceptance also shows you where you've been betraying yourself. You realize how many times your intuition tried to warn you. How many times you felt uneasy but ignored it. How many times your spirit whispered, "This isn't right," but you stayed anyway. Letting go becomes easier when you admit that your body felt the truth long before your mind accepted it. The heaviness, the overthinking, the emotional exhaustion, those were not signs of love. Those were signs of misalignment. And accepting misalignment is the first step toward realignment. Eventually, the attachment begins to fade, not because you stop caring, but because you stop pretending. You begin to understand that wanting someone to be different doesn't make them different. Wishing for more doesn't create more. Hoping for change doesn't cause change. You cannot build a healthy foundation on what if and maybe. You cannot build a future with someone who doesn't show up in the present. Letting go becomes easier when you finally choose reality over fantasy and yourself over suffering. And here is the most empowering part. Letting go is not giving up. It is giving yourself back. It is choosing clarity over confusion, peace over chaos, self-respect over attachment, growth over stagnation. The moment you accept what someone has shown you, consistently, clearly, repeatedly, you stop waiting for the version of them that only exists in your heart. You stop fighting for a place in someone's life who doesn't fight for a place in yours. You stop holding on to people who are not holding on to you. Letting go becomes easier when you understand that the truth doesn't hurt you. It frees you. Because once you see someone clearly, you can finally walk away confidently. Acceptance is the door, letting go is the key, and your peace is what waits for you on the other side. What you release creates space for what's meant for you. There is a divine shift that happens in your life the moment you decide to stop holding on to what is already slipping away. Letting go isn't just an emotional decision, it's a spiritual one. It's the moment you tell the universe, "I am ready for more than this." Because every time you cling to something that's hurting you, draining you, or delaying your growth, you block the blessings that were meant to flow toward you. What you release creates the space your life needs to finally align with what was always meant to find you. You cannot receive while your hands are full. You cannot elevate while you're anchored down. And you cannot grow while you're gripping onto something your spirit has already outgrown. Letting go may feel like loss at first, but it is actually the beginning of alignment. Alignment with your higher self, your true path, and the kind of love, peace, and opportunities you deserve. We often stay attached to people or situations long after their season in our lives has ended, not because they are good for us, but because they are familiar. Familiarity tricks you into thinking comfort exists where chaos lives. Some people were meant to walk with you for a chapter, not a lifetime. Some situations were meant to teach you, not keep you. Some connections were meant to awaken you, not anchor you. But the human heart gets attached. Attached to memories, attached to what if, attached to the version of someone we created in our minds. And because of this attachment, we hold on even when everything inside us is begging to let go. But nothing changes until you decide to release the things that are no longer growing with you. Releasing someone doesn't mean the love disappears. It means the priority shifts from holding on to them to healing yourself. There is a kind of strength in letting go that only people who've been broken understand. It's the strength that comes from realizing that peace matters more than presence, clarity matters more than closeness, and self-respect matters more than attachment. You stop forcing conversations that never go anywhere. You stop fighting for a connection that only drains you. You stop trying to explain your worth to someone who has shown they don't value it. When you finally release what is misaligned, you make room for what is meant for you. Relationships that bring peace instead of anxiety, opportunities that uplift instead of overwhelm, and environments that feed your growth instead of distracting you from it. Letting go also teaches you the difference between something ending and something improving. Not every ending is a loss. Many endings are upgrades disguised as heartbreak. You may not realize it now, but the person you cried over, the friendship that faded, the job you left, or the situation that collapsed was clearing a path for something far greater. Sometimes the universe removes what you're afraid to walk away from, because it knows you won't move unless it's gone. Sometimes rejection is protection. Sometimes endings are beginnings, and sometimes the most painful goodbyes lead to the most beautiful new chapters. Releasing requires trust, not in people, but in the process of life. Trust that what is meant for you will never require you to suffer for it. Trust that the right people will never make you question your value. Trust that the things aligned with your purpose will flow effortlessly, not forcefully. When you let go, you step into a place of surrender. You stop trying to control outcomes. You stop trying to save what doesn't want to be saved. You stop trying to rewrite a story that was never meant to have the ending you imagined. And in this surrender, life becomes lighter. Your heart becomes open again. Your future becomes clearer. You realize that letting go was never the ending. It was the clearing. When you release what isn't meant for you, you also release the emotional weight that was suffocating your spirit. You let go of the anxiety that came from trying to hold on to something unstable. You let go of the overthinking that consumed your mind. You let go of the disappointment that came from expecting sincerity from people who didn't know how to give it. You let go of the guilt that came from choosing yourself. You let go of the version of you that tolerated too much. And as you let go, you rise. You rise into the version of yourself that is stronger, wiser, softer, more intuitive, more grounded, and more aligned with your purpose. Releasing also helps you rediscover yourself. When you stop pouring into the wrong places, you finally have energy to pour into your own life. You reconnect with your passions, your dreams, your values, your inner strength. You stop depending on other people to define your worth. You stop letting someone else's presence determine your happiness. You stop waiting for external validation and start giving yourself the love you once begged for. Letting go doesn't empty you, it restores you. It brings you back to yourself. And the most beautiful part, once you create space, life fills it naturally. You attract better connections. You attract calmer relationships. You attract opportunities that match your growth. You attract people who choose you without hesitation. You attract environments that match your energy. What is meant for you will never feel confusing, draining, or uncertain. What is meant for you will come with clarity, stability, peace, and alignment. But you only unlock these blessings when you release what is blocking them. So remind yourself letting go is not losing. Letting go is choosing. Choosing peace over chaos. Choosing clarity over confusion. Choosing growth over comfort. Choosing yourself over someone who never chose you. And every time you choose yourself, the universe responds. The right people find you. The right situations align with you. The right blessings flow to you. Because what you release creates space for what's meant for you. And what's meant for you will always arrive exactly when your heart is ready to receive it.